Liechtenstein is the fourth smallest country in Europe and the sixth smallest in the world. The capital of Liechtenstein is Vaduz and it is nestled between Austria and Switzerland. It has just under 40,000 inhabitants and an area of only 160 square kilometers, which is 1.5 times the size of the island of Sylt. But how could such a tiny state survive in the middle of Europe? The state of Liechtenstein was founded back in 1719. At that time, the county of Vaduz and the lordship of Schellenberg merged. However, the state remained part of the Holy Roman Empire. It was only after the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire that it first became part of the Confederation of the Rhine and later the German Confederation, finally gaining full sovereignty in 1866. However, while industrialization began in other German states in the 19th century and the state systems were modernized, hardly anything changed in Liechtenstein and it remained an absolutist state. Shortly after the dissolution of the German Confederation in 1866, the military was also abolished in Liechtenstein and attempts were made to adopt a neutral stance in future, similar to Switzerland. Incidentally, the country still has no military to this day, making it only one of 4 countries, alongside Costa Rica, the Solomon Islands and Tuvalu, to have no armed forces at all. The country finally managed to remain completely neutral during the First World War, but this did not mean that the country was not severely affected by the consequences. Due to severe economic problems, there were calls for political reforms after the war. And so it came to pass and the power of the prince was more strongly restricted. At the same time, the country adopted a democratic constitution with many elements of direct democracy reminiscent of Switzerland. After a customs treaty was signed with Switzerland in 1923, the country also began to experience an economic upswing. The country was characterized in particular by its very liberal economic system and low taxation, from which many still benefit today. The Swiss franc was also adopted as the currency. The country also managed to remain completely neutral during the Second World War. For example, the border with Austria was completely sealed off over a length of 14 kilometers by fences and barriers, which were secured with the help of Swiss border guards. After the Second World War, the economic boom continued and the country quickly developed from an agricultural state into one of the most advanced service-providing nations. As the favorable economic conditions in the small country attracted many emigrants, a law came into force in 1972 limiting the number of foreigners to 1/3 of the total population. Nevertheless, the clocks tick a little differently than in the larger neighboring countries. For example, women's suffrage was only introduced at national level in 1984 at the third attempt and the principality only joined the United Nations in 1990. Incidentally, the parliament is tiny compared to the Bundestag, as there are only 25 members. Politically, the prince still has a major say today, as he has the right to veto every decision. Even in a referendum in 2012, which called for the right of veto to be restricted, it was rejected with over 75% of the vote. This clearly demonstrates the good relationship between the population and the princely family. The princely family of Liechtenstein is one of the oldest noble families in Europe, as it was first mentioned in 1136. Economically, the country still specializes in the service sector today. Banks, trustees and other financial service providers make up the majority of the economy. There are more jobs than the country has inhabitants, which is mainly due to the heavy border traffic and the many commuters. Most of them come from Switzerland. The country also has the highest density of companies in the world. Liechtenstein was long regarded as a tax haven due to its very low taxation. In addition, a massive tax evasion scheme involving Liechtenstein banks came to light in 2008, forcing the government to initiate a number of reforms. In 2009, a transparency and reform package was adopted, as a result of which Liechtenstein was removed from the OSCE's blacklist of tax havens. Liechtenstein also joined the Schengen Agreement in 2011, as a result of which border controls have now been completely abolished.